Imagine you're a student and you hear that school is starting an hour later. And on the first day of school, you're excited because you get to sleep more. But as you head home, you realize that you came home an hour later. And when you finally get to sleep, you notice that you've also slept an hour later. When you wake up the next morning, you're just as tired as before school started an hour later. Why is this? And this is why I stand on the firm investigation for a bill for starting school days later. I'll go into my two contentions, which is that it burdens families and that there are no benefits, and then I'll conclude. First, I'll go into my first contention that it burdens families. According to Cal Matters, while it may be easy enough for some families with flexible schedules to adjust, in some communities, parents who are working just to make ends meet don't have the luxury of moving their schedule around. In California, 45% of children live in low-income households, and 46% of those families are single-parent families. The idea that starting school later will not harm any students ignores the real-world constraints under which working-class families and single parents operate. Starting school later isn't just about learning. It's about the basic needs for low-income families and families who have strict schedules. They can't afford to move their schedules around because they might lose their jobs if they can't make it to their job in time. And this means that we're just giving an obstacle to many of these families. This is why later school times would negatively affect many low-income families, and this is why we can't start our school days later. Now I'm going to move on to our second contention, which is that there are no benefits. According to the Washington Post, starting later just means kids will stay up later at night. As we say, people always argue that if you wake up later, go to school later, then you'll still somehow get to sleep earlier and not sleep later. However, this is not true because if you arrive to school later, then you'll just come back from school later, and if you come back from school later, you'll just finish your homework later. This also means you'll sleep later. And sleeping later means you still don't get that promised more extra hour of sleep, meaning that there is no solvency in this plan. When we argue that students are going to get more sleep, we are not considering the fact that school also starts later. And if we don't make school end later, then students won't get that educational time they need to practice their information and that they've learned. This means that there is absolutely no solvency, and this is why I stand on the firm investigation side of this topic.